What's one podcasting hill that you're willing to die on?
Like die for as in like stand or die on like goodbye?
That was a very technical and like deep cut answer that I very much appreciate.
Dope.
But you also just embrace exploitation. How do you feel about that?
Wait, what? I'm not going to be able to think about anything else all day. Is this the kind of answer you were looking for? Can we start over?
You were telling me that you don't think that having an abundance of people who are freelance producers rather than working for an organization is a good signal for the podcast industry. Can you tell me why?
Yeah. Yesterday and today I was talking with a lot of people who are independent producers or freelancers. And many of them told me they'd rather have someone who pay them like a monthly wage, pay their Medicares. They don't need to, because being a freelancer is a tough career. Where's the next check? Maybe it's next month. It's not stable. So if the industry is good, it's flourish, I would say many of the freelancers will get employed.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. You think that possibly having a job, having a salary signals stability, but there have been a lot of podcast layoffs recently, I would say within the last 2 years. And there also have been a lot of journalist layoffs, journalists who often work in audio journalism and video journalism, who are in many ways part of the podcast industry. What are your thoughts on the stability of branded podcasting and journalism-based podcasting right now? And a follow-up question, how do you think that working for an organization really impacts the creativity of the audio industry?
From my point of view, the layoff in the creative industry is not unique, because we see a lot of other layoff in other industries. Like Amazon just announced 30K layoff a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and Microsoft did a lot of layoff this year, and Meta and some other companies. And I would not say the creative industry's layoff is unique, because it's a trend right now. If you're really skilled at something like podcasting or something, it's a good time for you, especially with the power of AI is crazy day after day. So yeah, you can do 10x things than before. Maybe the January of 2025 right now. Yeah, so it's a good time for the solo entrepreneurship. I would say that. So it's a good time, and it's a bad time. It's a bad time because a lot of people getting laid off and they don't know where's the next check. And it's a good time. You can do 10x things than before with the power of technology. And if you're really good at something, you can make a lot of money by being the influencer. That will be easily, on TikTok, YouTube, or podcasting. So yeah, we have been seeing a lot of very influential channels that are only running by 1 or 3 people, right? It's very common.
So do you think small creative teams that can sustain themselves, almost like an organization, is kind of the middle ground that we're headed toward?
Yeah, from my perspective, I'd rather have more smaller teams, because I will have less, not that stronger competitors. That's from my perspective, right? After all, I think the smaller team, the small studio will be better for the creativity. Because no matter how many people, how large the size of the team is, I believe you might want to agree that the best content is created by the only very few people in that team, right? It's like a dictatorship, I would say. The content creating is a dictatorship industry. Yes. So if you are in a company like Disney, you have a lot of ideas that are gonna be killed. But if you work for yourself, and that like 100 ideas will finally 10 of them will succeed.
What is the weirdest place you've ever recorded a podcast in, and how did it sound?
Oh my God. I have recorded in a lot of weird places, and I mix them up because I do like some weird music, sound design-y stuff too. So I'm not sure. I can tell you some of the weirdest places I've recorded stuff. Back of a car many times, like back seat of the car, jacket over the head where you're like speaking into the back seat for like cushioning. Shockingly sounds great. So if you're ever on the road and you need to record in a pinch, that's a great location. A lot of closets, classics. Where else is weird? I don't know if this is weird recording, but we went to the middle of nowhere, Missouri, Chillicothe, Missouri. And we were in court doing court reporting, and we couldn't actually record in the courtroom. So it was sort of like a different way of recording where we all had to take notes about what was happening in court. And so I was drawing to try to like remember the people's faces that were in the courtroom and trying to get like some color anecdotes to be like, okay, what was the sounds that were going on? What was the feeling? And then someone else was recording writing down recording direct quotes, and someone else was writing down just like general run of show, so that we could come together after and record actual audio. And that was a really interesting process and weird town to be in, and also room to be in.
I have a question for you.
What's that?
What is your hot take on what's killing podcasting right now?
Ooh, what's killing podcasting right now? Ooh, this is gonna be really mean. TikTok. Short burst culture. We're unlearning long form listening daily. And I know people who watch reels with the sound off. They're just like, I gotta see the thing, cool, and then just skip it. We don't slow listen anymore.
Can I push back on this?
Please do.
I feel like we do slow listen, but I think we treat podcasts like our favorite NBA team, where we have maybe a starting five, that like 3 to 5 shows that we rotate between on a regular basis. Yeah. So if we want to listen to a new show, we're more than likely kicking one of those shows out of that top 5, right? We're probably listening to it a little bit less in favor of that. So you're competing with like some high competition in terms of like new loyal listeners acquisition. I think that TikTok is a quantity game where it's like, okay, if I can get through 5 TikToks, which is absolutely egregious, to be clear, it is egregious. But if I can get through 5 short videos of your show and I still maybe want to watch a 6th, that's probably a good sign that I should just check out the full episode so I can actually have more context to what I'm watching.
I totally buy that. I think what I struggle with is the whole vertical integration. I don't know. Maybe am I officially old enough to be like, back in my day? But I just feel like sometimes you just had to let stuff unfold itself. Mm-hmm. And like the concept was a good concept. Maybe you weren't buying some of the features just yet, but you stayed in the show because you're like, I'll give it 3 full episodes.
So I have another pushback on the being old enough. I think part of it was like when you think about the shows that make podcasting, right? The shows that everybody points to, the serials, the NPR shows that are always in the top 5s. When they first started, at the height of the beginning of podcasting, there was not a lot of indie alternatives, right?
1,000%.
So there were not a lot of people who could go to a store, pick out a podcast mic, knew how to edit audio, possibly video, and put out a show on an RSS feed. Yeah. Were there people who did it? Absolutely. Yeah. Now, there's drastically more because we can get this for $200,
right?
Sit in our closet, sound pretty decent, and go on about our day. Yeah. And I think that is also informing how we think about short form video. I think that in our relationship with long form and unfolding, it's almost like we have robbed ourselves of the opportunity to slow walk an audience and find an audience more intentionally. It's all about if I want to get my return on investment for all this money I've spent, then I need to make money fast. And to make money fast, I need to have a global audience. I can't have a more intentional audience, or we feel like we can't have a more intentional audience.
I think to that point, I think we'll sometimes sell out a better story for a quick audience bump. And I think that that's a hard thing that a lot of folks, especially when they're new in this space, don't know about. I'm really constantly reminded about something that Rich Nichols told. So Rich Nichols was the former, rest in peace, former manager of the Roots, and on his deathbed, Amir Questlove Thompson.
Are you saying his whole government name?
Well, sorry, Questlove. I did it for those who don't know who I'm talking about. Anyway, but he asked the question. He said, Rich, why did you not let us do all the fad things that a lot of the folks were doing? And he said, and it was the sweetest line, and it was so short and sweet. He said, everyone loses. I wanted you guys to lose last. The idea that you eventually will stop being relevant. Your work will stop being relevant. There's a point where you retire, you die, whatever. There's a point where you can no longer stay in the space that you've been in. How can I ensure that that's far, 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 far away in the future? And so that notion meant that there were times where the Roots would not take certain gigs. There were times where, they would see these flashy folks who would come up and burn up. I don't want to name anybody. I'm not trying to tell. No one want no smoke. Anyway, but they would burn up, be really in the culture for a minute, and they would be gone. And now we look around and they're everywhere. They are so important to the way things are made today that I'm always nervous that we are interested in selling out tomorrow. Or we're interested in selling out next week or 3 months from now or a year from now because we're interested in what we can get for tomorrow.
At some point in the future, we're going to have to talk about why Questlove is always the people call when they're on their deathbed.
Oh my gosh, don't even get me started on that. Don't get me started on that. Did you read the article about
D'Angelo?
Oh my gosh. Oh, it hurt so bad.
For context, we are in Richmond, which is where D'Angelo is from. So this is adding to the agony.
I want some of your brown sugar. That was not good. That was not good. We're not even trying to act like I have.
So on this episode of Honey and Hustle, we're talking about the relationship between music and audio. I'm joking. So since you've been name dropping a little bit, I'm curious to know which podcast you think new podcasters, current podcasters could really benefit from studying.
All right, so there's one that I have been eating religiously, and that's one song, Diallo Riddle and Luxury. One of the things I love about that particular podcast is it is both a history lesson, it is a conversation about pop culture, and it is the anatomy of music. And so from somebody who's deeply in love with the sonic, it's really awesome for lots of reasons, but one of the big ones is we get to hear naked vocals. So they literally play back the session mix of really popular music. And I remember when they finally they played, I think it was Hypnotize, and they played Biggie's raw vocal. And it's untreated anything, and he sounds like a baby. Versus in Hypnotize, he sounds like this demigod, right? And so it's just crazy how mixes change things. So for me, it's been one song. I also think that Diallo Riddle is one of the best writers of our generation. Him and his writing partner, Bashir. I just am absolutely enamored by their ability to make cultural references that supersede time, space, culture, gender. There's all sorts of stuff, and they're very eager to push into what the music is doing in that way.
So this isn't a podcast episode about the relationship between music and podcasting, but I do want to say, back to your TikTok comment, that one thing that grinds my gears about TikTok is that music podcasts have a very hard time on the platform because their songs get flagged if they play a song or they play a vocal.
I deeply love listening to music. I'm a professor of film studies at in the sound department at UNC Wilmington in Wilmington, North Carolina. And one of the things that I am always frustrated by is my students bring me music and it's shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And we're watching the advent of the culture, specifically technical culture, technology, is dictating the length of music. And I can't, Like, we get one verse and it's over. And I'm like, we used to have interstitials that were like that and interludes that were like that. But, like, our songs were, like, 5 and 6 minutes long. You know what I'm saying?
I still listen to blues music, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Sorry,
I'm yeah.
Shout out to Ludwig Göransson and Miles Canton and Sinners, the whole Sinners soundtrack. Yeah.
I'm from Alabama, and Brittany Howard wrote the song that Perlene sang, so shout out to Brittany Howard.
Yes.
Shout out to St. Paul and the Broken Bones, who just released an album this month.
Yes. Shout out to Serena Göransson for executive music producing that record so we could listen. We got all these brilliant minds. Rihanna Giddens, North Carolina's own.
Yeah.
Justin Robinson. You know, we got all these great, brilliant people on that record. Golly. James Blake. Golly, y'all. That's just, if you have not seen Sinners, go see Sinners. You know, Sinners has been out for I don't know how long, but it blues music till the day I die. Bobby Rush.
Lisa,
Angela.
what is one thing that you do for listeners that nobody sees?
One thing that I do for listeners that nobody sees is I think constantly about what people are interested in, what they might want to learn about, but more importantly, how can I best tell this story or explain this technique or introduce this guest in a way that will have the maximum impact, but also be fun. It's a sewing podcast or a craft creative podcast, and we do lots of different things, but I'm always trying to kind of diversify in terms of who is doing what, and just to kind of be a possibility model. You know, I interview people who I think are possibility models in some ways, and I hope that that encourages other people to do that in their own lives. So essentially, research. I think that was the long answer. The short answer is research. Y'all, it seems organic, but it's a lot of research. There's research.
What is one listener message that changed your show?
One listener message that changed the show was when I very first started back in 2019, I would have an outline. I would have like a script like I wanted to kind of follow. And I heard from a listener that it sounded like I was reading. And so basically I had to kind of get off the page and just put very short bullet points. Like, here's the first step, the second step, the third step, and then talk it through. Because otherwise it felt a bit more artificial, a bit more academic, which is something I often kind of like work against because I am trained as an academic, but I'm not an academic on this show. I'm just a fun-ass person. I'm also a pretty amazing academic because I'm like a regular person too, and I dress really well. So
I think that's the cheat code, is to dress well and to also be smart.
And make all your own clothes.
You heard it here first. Stitch, please.
Yes. Do it. We'll help you get your stitch together.
We are at what I would call the premier podcast festival for audio and storytelling. Would you agree?
I mean, I like to hear it.
He agrees. So, what is one thing that you feel like is quietly working in audio and storytelling that a lot of people are ignoring?
James Kim has a philosophy of microphone usage in which he uses different microphones in the way that movie directors and cinematographers use camera lenses. And I think that it contributes to a very strong sense of place and an understanding of dramatic flow in his productions. And I'm waiting for everyone to adopt his methodology.
What is one podcast that you think all audio storytellers should study?
I think that there are many different reasons to study things. I think that Love and Radio is a most excellent show that everyone should listen to. And I think that because the show is always something different every episode, there is going to be some episode there that is worthy of study for your specific brand of podcasting.
Lauren, what is your podcast growth cheat code in one sentence?
borrow audience from your podcast friends. Is that a real sentence? No.
I think that's a real sentence. You also just embrace exploitation. How do you feel about that?
Embrace exploitation? What do you mean?
Of someone else's podcast audience.
Oh, you're not embracing exploitation. You're borrowing audience and giving something back. You got to share. You always have to give something back.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Okay, you're right though. Borrowing makes it sound exploitative. Okay. All right, I hear you. You're helping me tweak my messaging. Borrowing and reciprocating. Because finding the right audience is good, and figuring out how to work with that podcast to get in front of those people and give something back to the person you're borrowing from. Okay. Borrowing an audience just sounds so much easier. Angela, you're making my life harder. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to, not get you canceled by... It's my job. That's what I'm here for.
Borrowing does sound bad. No one's ever mentioned this before. No, you're the first one.
I'm glad to be the first. The first of many. I'm joking.
Sharing. No, what's a better word? Will you help me workshop this?
Sure.
What's a way to say partnering with your podcast friends? Partnering with your podcast friends. Okay. That's it.
There we go. Okay. But what is your number one way to make podcast friends?
Go here, be here. And be a podcast listener first. You gotta love audio first. I talk to a lot of podcast growth people that don't listen, or just people in the industry that don't listen, and that really confuses me. Because I think to know how to grow an audience, you have to really love podcasts and audio, because that's the best way to figure out what's out there and how listeners are really listening. So be a listener first, and then go to events, and just be a nice person.
You also put together the Pitch Party podcast.
Yeah. I like talking about Pitch Party.
If the mic that the guests are using to record their episodes could talk, what tea would they spill about your company?
That the founder of Tink Media is not business-minded at all and likes to have more fun than business and doesn't know what she's doing most of the time. But she has people working with her that do and call her out on stuff, and she usually looks to them first.
I was just looking for the truth.
That's the truth.
But the truth is also that you have a really great team.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at, yeah.
And I've asked you this at previous Resonates, and I'm going to ask you again because I feel like I've given you enough time to think about it. How did you find your amazing team of collaborators and contractors and audio professionals and co-conspirators, all the things?
The least conventional ways possible. I feel like Anne, who's on my team, it was kind of random, and I was like, an email, I was like, do you want to talk about the role tomorrow on the phone call? And they were like, I can't, I'm at Disney World with my mom. And I was like, no questions, I have no further questions, you're hired, you're at Disney World with your mom, I love that. I saw a tweet that they wrote that was like, I wish someone would pay me to write about podcasts. I DM'd them, didn't know who they were. I was like, it sounds like you're the right kind of person I want to work with. I find people that love audio and that I think have the same values and care about the same stuff I do. And then I figure out the rest. It's all been very like that, which doesn't make a lot of sense. I think also, I'm a PR and marketing company. Tink is a PR and marketing company. I've never hired a PR person or a marketing person. I can teach anyone PR and marketing. I can't teach someone how to love audio. And that's the most important thing. So anyway, it's all starts there with someone that I know really, really loves audio.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for also workshopping my messaging about borrowing audience.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for. What role do you feel like AI realistically plays in podcasting and storytelling and audio in the future?
Okay. Hopefully it doesn't poison all of our air and dry up all of our bodies of water and raise all of our electrical bills and sneaky deals. But I think it is a powerful tool that we can't get away from. Like, it's in Descript. My entry-level jobs in audio were correcting AI transcriptions, and then I used to work at a big network, and we used human transcription services that were always more accurate. But then they all got laid off or converted into correcting AI transcriptions for their jobs. So there's like a democratization of some production capabilities and also like a mediocratization of those same capabilities where it's powerful to be able to like have a Descript account and be able to make better overview of a conversation is meaningful and significant in my own workflows. It's still incumbent on me to be thoughtful about the work that I'm doing and not to just over rely. Like I'm not printing AI summaries of my stuff either, because I think people know when there's slop. But if you can help me with a little bit of a lift, I'm not mad that a thing is helping me remove ums. That's not really the only downside I see there is that there's an entry level, like that could be something that would be part of training someone who is going to grow in the work. The thing that I think is really positive and very niche is I do investigative journalism, and sometimes a source will only speak on conditions of anonymity. But as a journalist and an audio journalist where there's like an experiential component to what I'm reporting on, it might be very actually, there's a reason that you have a witness on a witness stand, right? You need to have a human like head and heart discourse with an audience or a listener or a jury of listeners. And to be able to maintain somebody's exact pacing and intonation and vocal stresses and then also just revoice them weirdly with AI and have them sound like a different kind of person if it's not material to the story, be able to obscure their identity while maintaining like absolute journalistic accuracy for their delivery is meaningful to me as from a storytelling perspective, from a conveyance of significance perspective, like establishing stakes. That is really helpful actually. I would like more voice actors to continue having work as well, but there's a layer of abstraction there that I think actually, if I was going to pick one thing we're allowed to use AI for, it might be that, where you can, it's actually only a value add, I think, in that one very narrow context. Everything else, there's a lot of, you have to think about all the other ripples off of how that is going to impact your own work, the reception of it, its presentation, how it is going to be able to enable you is still going to be fraught with some nuance.
I think I appreciate your perspective, but I also want to play the role of a tech bro and say that unique use case is not scalable or profitable for my venture capitalist investors. Mm-hmm. What do you have to say to them in this moment?
Ooh, okay. Well, first of all, it would be a better world if we weren't only thinking about how to like juice and maximize our profits. That is not how any natural system works. And if you want to just like pump and dump your property and blow something up and get out of there, I don't really prioritize your viewpoints in terms of why I should care. I understand why it is less attractive and less likely to be facilitated by what you random tech bro are doing, but also you're going to be doing what you're doing, and this is going to be one of the products that you have in the mix because there's an ad use case for it too, where you can get AI ads that are made for specific demographics. I hate that. That's where a host in like podcasting, we're built on having a real authentic relationship with your audience. I was at a different conference, which shall not be named, where and it's a podcast conference, one of their panels was 3 people presenting like breathlessly about how they could generate ads for an audience based on like the demographics they could read off your phone. And like, okay, great. You're an Asian man. We're going to make the ad in this person's voice because we think that's going to be the most appealing to you. And so now we're, okay, tech bro, sure, you can profile us with this same technology and try to spin that off. But I know it's going to come with, to me, this is a fringe benefit of a giant boulder that's already rolling downhill to its lowest common denominator logical conclusion. And I'm happy to find ways to use your infrastructure for something that is going to be more beneficial to society. And also, yeah, profit is real, incentives are real, but good for you. That's not really my set of priorities, but I will be paying attention and see how I can use the tools that you're trying to spin up